8:19. Okay, we finished with Malika. Oh man, there's so many amazing halachas here about how they used to do. I put in the front page over here. You also have it back there. The what do you call it? The ratios of the measurements. Revius, Rovakav, Revius, Rovakav, Revi'it Hahin. That's more of it. When we say Revius, that's basically half a cup of water. Revius Hahin is closer to a liter. Okay, that's a quarter of a hin. Okay, and then we have the hins and the saron, the omer, the ephah, all different measures of flour. So it's important to keep these in mind. Basically, we saw that there's Rav Chaim Noah's measurements. Those are based on what the Rambam himself wrote in Perush HaMishnayos. He talks about the difference between the weight of a revius of wine and a revius of water. The Rambam weighed them in drams, which was a measure of weight back in Egypt in the day. And it's a well-known measure. It's about 3 grams or so. So the Rambam points out there that wine is less dense than water because of its alcohol content. Okay? And he says a revius of water should weigh this much dram, and a revius of wine should weigh that much dram. And that gives us a revius of 86 ml, basically. But there are others who say within the Rambam, like Rabbi Rabinovich and Rabbi Bar-Hayim have pointed out that other ways of measuring give us 75 ml. So what's the ratio? 86 ml to 75 ml. If you get basically it's 1.14 with a 6, continuing 6. Okay, that's the ratio to them. So if you want to take one of the smaller Rambam measurements we're going to use, which are easier to use, and you want to get Rav Chaim Noah's measurements, multiply, at least for volume, multiply by 1.146 with a bar over it, and you get it. So 75 times that number, that ratio gives you 86. Okay. Good. Now that we have that down, you said that what's halacha according to whose edition? We're discussing smashing the cheres, right? It says uchli cheres asher tivu shabol yishaver, and muraku shutaf b'mayim. They cook the chatos and other sacrificial meat in these pots. So there's non-kosher blias there, right? So the metal pots have to be scoured and koshered once those tastes are nosar. And if it's a kli cheres, for whatever reason, nobody ever uses an earthenware pot to boil meat anymore. But if you'd have it, let's say, you had such a thing, so it's no SARS in there, leftover taste of the old korban. Every korban has its expiration date, so you got to destroy that cheres, right? And we saw there was machlokas, and it says here, and then we talked about, do we mention washing the blood off the begadim, right? Mm-hmm. So you also, chatos blood gets on some beged, so it has to be washed. And we pointed out that it can't be a Kohen's beged because the Kohanim don't wash their begadim. They're just taken out of service. So regular Jews' shirt gets, assuming it's a shirt that's Mekabel Tuma, a shirt made out of entirely synthetic material is not Mekabel Tuma, at least according to the way we understand this. So to become Mekabel Tuma, a shirt has to be made of normal fabrics, or it has to be leather, and then it gets this blood on it. So it's a mitzvah to scour the blood. You know, take the blood out of the shirt or whatever it is in the azara, right? So which halacha was it? What? No, we mentioned the 5 things, the way they the 5 substances. No, so the 7 substances they used in the olden days to remove blood. Yeah. And we mentioned the one thing that they don't use that you could use outside the base of mikdash was urine. Okay, can't bring in some fermented urine. Why would you use fermented urine to remove stains?
It makes things pungent.
No, that's for Ketores. That's the havamina that's used in the Ketores. It's because the ammonia. Okay, the ammonia, when you let real good urine stay, it develops ammonia, which is a powerful cleaning agent. It also smells bad. It used to be they put ammonia in window cleaner. Nowadays, it's not ammonia. Well, at least here in this country. Do they still sell ammonia in America?
The blue spray? They do.
Yeah. Yeah. Here in Israel, it's not. It's just a blue spray, as we call it. It's a blue bottle with basically a much more mild and easier substance. Okay.
I prefer ammonia.
Okay.
I've cleaned things before.
Okay. So I think it says here it has to be smashed in the azara. Yud. It's halacha yud in class. I see.
8:19.
I'm reading it. 8:19. Okay, fine. So I'm going down. According to which edition?
It's the only one I know.
Okay, so I'm going to use 19 according to this.
Beged
Beged
Sheni
Sheni Tazalav. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I was confused by, as you know, Machon Mamre puts it differently than everybody else, right? According to Machon Mamre, this is Halacha Yud Zayin.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Or rather, everybody else deviates from the accepted manuscript.
accepted manuscript. Okay. Beged Sheni Tazalav Dam Chatat V'Yatsa Chutz Lazara Machziro Lazara. So let's say the shirt, his coat got blood on it from the blood of the sin offering, and then it left the Azara. How did it leave the Azara? He took off his coat, started getting hot. You could go to the base of Mikdash in the morning. I've been there in the morning, so it's nice and cool. But by 9 o'clock, now the sun is shining, and then it's hotter. So he took off his coat. He has to bring his coat back to the temple courtyard, umechabaso sham, and that's where he launders it to remove the blood. This act of removed blood has to be in the Azara. Nidma chutz la Azara. Wait a minute, but now his beged was pure when he was wearing the Azara, and it got blood on it, blood of the chatas. And then he left the Azara, and now it's become tame there. The coat is now tame. He can't bring it to the Azara because it's forbidden to bring contaminated garments into the Azara. But it has to be brought to the Azara so that he could launder the blood off of it. What should he do? Ketzad Yaseh. So here's what Chazal said. Kora'o kadeshi yitar. He rips the coat so that it becomes what? Tahor. Remember, kalim. Kalim is a general term for man-made implements. Yeah. Kalim includes tools, instruments, and clothing, among other things. Lots of things can be kalim. So a kli that's been destroyed, it's no longer useful as what it was, is no longer, whatever tumah it had is gone. So he rips it to the extent that now it's tahor. Okay, so he basically has to rip rove. Okay, umachniso umchabso bifnim. If it was a cup, how do you destroy a cup so it's not a kli anymore? Poke a hole in it, right? Then it can't hold water. A shirt or a coat, you can't just poke a hole in it because it still functions as a shirt or a coat, so you have to rip it. Okay, so he brings that in. He rips it until it's now tahor because not a coat, but it's still garment. It's still made out of material that can accept that has the blood on it. And then he brings it into the Azara, and then he launders it there. But he has to make sure that there's still enough of it that's not ripped, so it's a maporet. Maporet is enough that's like a turban, mitpachat, right? Why does he have to leave a little bit left? Okay, so because that's the minimum that could still be makabel tuma. Remember, something that it's not a coat anymore. But if you were to rip it into two small pieces, there wouldn't be a piece there that's even makabel tuma on its own, right? What's the smallest piece of garment that can be makabel tuma? 3 by 3, right? Mm-hmm. So there you go. Lefisha nemar beged, sarich lechabes beged. It's supposed to be halachically beged. As I said, halachically beged is 3 by 3. Okay, if he rips it into two small pieces, it's not even a beged anymore. At least now it's not a kli, not considered a full garment. Sometimes the word beged means material. Sometimes it means something that's material that's big enough to receive tuma, and sometimes it means an actual garment, the way we say it. Okay, so in this case, it means it has to be beged. It has to be a significant size piece of material. And even though, wait a minute, now this beged is still tamei midrabanan, because now there's at least, it's not a me'il anymore. It's not a shirt, but it's still be used as something to wrap the head, right? What can you use? How do you make a do-rag? You cut your t-shirt, right? Mm-hmm. So, kevan shenikra rubo, because it's been mostly ripped, the doraisa tuma left. Tahar mina Torah muter lachniso lebikdash lechabes adam. We don't say that, well, it's still tuma derabanan. You could bring it in to fulfill the mitzvah that the Torah requires of laundering out the blood. You can still bring it to the mikdash. Okay. Me'il shani tazalav dam chatat. This is not the me'il I was just giving an example of. This refers to what? The Kohen Gadol's me'il, the halachic me'il. What is the Kohen Gadol's me'il made out of? A regular Kohen doesn't wear a me'il. A regular Kohen's wearing just one kesones. Yeah, it's entirely woolen and techeles. So regular Kohen Gadol is wearing those, basically the mechnasayim, which is basically linen underwear, right? With a belt that he ties quite high. And he's wearing a kesones, which is one linen robe, and a woven belt made out of woolen linen. The belt doesn't really insulate him, and he's wearing a linen hat. And a Kohen Gadol wears his hat differently, as we saw, and he's wearing me'il and an ephod, right? So he's a little bit warmer. Kohen Gadol is wearing basically 2 layers of tunic, a robe. He has the white robe underneath and the blue robe on top, and he has the apron. Okay, so and the apron's multicolored. So this me'il, what says there's an avera. It's an Isser Doraisa to rip the me'il, right? What does it say? What's the actual halacha here? What's the pasuk there? Okay. Either way, we'll see it soon. So it says he can't rip that. So that got blood on it. Yatzav nitma b'chutz, and the Kohen Gadol walked out of the Azara, and there the me'il, his me'il got tummy. We just said regular man's coat, so you rip it, and they can bring it back to the Azara, but you can't rip the me'il. Remember we said earlier, a few halachas ago, actually in Klei HaMikdash, that there's an Isser D'Oraisa specifically not to rip the me'il. So what do? Machdiso pachoth mishalosh esbaoth. So you have one Kohen stand outside the Azara and push in a piece of the me'il which is less than 3 by 3 fingers. Okay, the minimum size of this. Basically, you just stick in the part of the stain. Let me take out an example. I have material here that looks like it's. Yeah. Let's say this is the Kohen Gadol's me'il, the material. So this is the line. So you have one Kohen stay over here and just take the blood spot, less than 3 by 3 etzbot. How big is an etzbah? We said an etzbah is basically a centimeter, right?
Talking about this?
Yeah. We said it's like 2 by 2 centimeters, like that, whatever it is.
I thought it was 3 by 3.
No, wait. A tefach is 4 fingers and 8 centimeters. So each etzbah is 2 centimeters. Okay. So it's 6 by 6 centimeters. Okay. So he sticks in a little bit just beyond the line like that. Okay. That's how he does it. So he doesn't have to rip the me'il, and he's also not bringing in something tamei into the mikdash, but he is bringing the blood that's stained on the garment. The Kohen Gadol's me'il does need to be washed. That's not the type of thing that was single use. The Big Day Kahuna, when the Rambam talks about single use, is usually talking about what? It's talking about regular garments. But the Kohen Gadol today, you can't just throw away the me'il and use it. That's not saying they got blood on it. And there's a mitzvah to get rid of the damachatos. Okay. There you go. You imagine how much does it cost to make a whole beged tcheles?
$2 million.
Really? You think so?
I think.
Why would it be that way?
Too. They made a
$2 million? Really? Baruch Sturman did that? Because you see that they have the vat of tcheles. In order to make a me'il, can you? How do they make the tzitzis? Chazal said there was a lashon of tcheles. What's a lashon of tcheles? A big tuft of wool that's been properly processed, and then they dunk that into the vat, and they make it tcheles, right? And they spin threads out of it. At Psil Tchelet nowadays, the people making tcheles spin basically they sometimes they just dunk the strings. Right?
No, it's the kasha on the Rambam.
Yeah. So the Rambam mentions you dip the individual strings into it so you could get half a string, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Rambam's talking about strings. Question is, you first have to create the wool and the whatever it is, the strings, the threads to make the me'il, and then once they're tcheles, then make the me'il, or can you make the me'il entirely out of regular white wool and then dunk that into the vat of tcheles? I wonder. Yeah. The other garments are woven out of tcheles, argamon, tolashani, and sheish. Sheish is linen, and argamon and tolashani are purple and red wool. So in order to get multicolors, you have to dye everything separately. But the me'il is kulo tcheles. It's mashma that they wouldn't dunk it. They make it out of that which was already previously tcheles. Okay, just a question. Okay. So it says he does this inside. Once he's washed off all the blood from this, he's laundered the blood from the me'il, then he can purify the me'il outside the base of mikdash. He dunks in the mikveh then. Okay. Let's see the next halacha. Kli cheres should be shelbo hachataf. Okay. He cooked the chatas in this kli cheres. So now he has to destroy the kli cheres, right? But yatsa, and it left the azar for whatever reason. Machdi so b'shovro b'fnim. So he brings it back to the azar to smash it there. He shouldn't smash it outside the mikdash. The mitzvah is to smash it within the azara. Nitba b'chutz. Oh, but now the Cheres pot got contaminated before he could bring it back to the Azara in order to smash it. So what'd she do? No kvo b'ktei shorish katan. He should perforate it. Shorish katan. What's a shorish katan? Like an atzitz nakuv. Just enough so that if there was a plant growing in this pot, it'd be able to send forth a root through the bottom so it could get, nourishment from the ground, right?
Mhm.
You've seen that happen before. There's a story of the Chazon Ish. What happened with the Chazon Ish? That someone didn't believe him. Says it's possible, atzitz nakuv, but it's on the 7th floor of an apartment building in Bnei Brak. Just because the pot has a hole in it, it's drawing sustenance from the ground of Eretz Yisrael. It's 7 stories above ground, and there's a paved floor underneath it, the balatas. How does it get nourishment that way? He says, "Don't worry, you'll see." And he said he left an atzitz nakuv on the floor of the house, and it sent forth a root that basically got between the balatas. Yeah, you see it. There's an old building. There's a 20 years ago they built a hotel right above the Mamila, right at the corner of Jaffa Street, and you cross Jaffa Street to get to the area to walk on, where Jaffa Street becomes meets the walls of the old city in Jerusalem, major intersection at City Hall there, right? So across diagonally from City Hall is a crumbling hotel that was built 20 years ago. You know that? How long was it open for? Just a few years. A real eyesore right in the middle of Jerusalem. Prime real estate, nothing doing there. So there are weeds growing out of the ceiling of the hotel, right? So you saw that the Atzitz Nakuv caused the plant to somehow find a way in between the balatas. Right? That's Shorish Katan. So he said the bracha when he saw that, Chacham, right, there's somehow an Atzitz Nakuv on the 7th floor of a building still somehow draws its nourishment from the land of Israel. Right? So an Atzitz Nakuv is considered attached to the ground. Okay.
It also applies to Hilchot about like moving an Atzitz Nakuv.
Yeah, you're disconnecting it.
Zakira.
Yeah. Shorish Katan. Kadei Sheitar Umakliso V'Shorov. So he has this earthenware vessel has to somehow make it back into the Azara, into the temple courtyard. So he punches a hole in it. So now it's not a kli anymore because it can't hold water, literally. And then he can smash it in the Azara because now it's been purified. Vim nikavo nekev gadol mizeh. If he made it too big a hole, eno shovro bifnim, he can't bring it back to smash in the Azara. Why not? Sharei eno kli. Now it's not a kli at all. Before it just was a different type of kli. It's not the same kli it was. Before you made it a kli, it's a different kli. It's not the kli cheres. It can't hold water, but still has some function. If you make it too big a hole, it has no function whatsoever. Right? You see this distinction? Little hole makes it's not what it used to be. It's a different kli. Okay, now it's been purified, but it's still technically some sort of kli. It's not what it used to be. You make the hole too big, it's completely useless. It's just shvarim. Vein shorim b'fnim ela kalim. The only thing you can break, you can smash inside the base of mikdash is a kli. So, by the way, who's the classic story about this? It wasn't Helene Malka who did it. It was Shlom Tzion Malka, I think. Who? What happened? All the kalim right before the wedding, the cups they're going to drink, the wedding party, got contaminated. So instead of what do you do if they have Tamei mace? What do you do if they have Tumas mace? How long does it take to get rid of Tumas mace on kalim? A whole week. Okay. Anything that says Tumas mace there's a week-long process of purification. If it was a type of tuma that's others removed by mikvahs, that's you dunk them today, and tonight they'll be pure. But it's the type that 7-day purification. So what did she do to purify them right away? She had them all punctured. She had the glass guy, or I guess the metal worker, puncture them all, so they're not, cups anymore, technically speaking. Now they're all tahorim, and then he quickly fixed them, punched up the hole again, and now they're kalim once again. They're pure. So Chazal made gzeira. No, you can't do that.
Oh.
Okay, you do that trick. They still have midrabanan. They still have the tuma they originally had. Okay. So this is a good distinction. Small punctures, now purified, but still a kli. You make a small puncture, so we purified it because it's not the kli it used to be, but it's still a kli. If you make too big a hole, so it's not a kli anymore, and you can't even smash it, you can't even bring it to the Azara. Okay. Let's see this one. The v'chein kli matachot or klei matachot. You have kli matachot. Okay. Shabish labo. So it's a singular. Kli matachot shemish labo means metal, not just earthenware. by the way, this is something I was trying to clarify to someone because I'll use the very general term for matachoth, means metals, means things that can be melted down, or in masecha in biblical Hebrew, the samech instead of a tough. So, what metals did they have in the olden days? Well known, the six mentioned in Bamidbar.
Yeah, and then there's also
The noble metals. They had
gold, silver, iron, tin,
and copper.
Copper.
But alloys thereof. Basically, when they say copper, I mean copper and alloys. Yeah.
What am I missing?
Lead.
Lead.
Okay. So those are the kind that men have identified. Turns out they're all elemental, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, but iron oxidizes and copper and silver tarnish. But
it always includes any.
Fine. So those are the ones that were known. Nowadays we have other forms of metal. There are those who wanted to say, I remember this, that aluminum, basically aluminum as a form of pure metal is something that we only got in the modern era. Mm-hmm. It's present in the Earth's crust all over the place. It's like, what is the Earth made out of? Basically silicon dioxide and aluminum. So it's all over the place. Well,
no, it's because bauxite, it doesn't like being on its own.
So it's
bauxite is like super difficult to.
Oh right, aluminum is one of the was it alkali metals?
No, it's on the far right side of the periodic table, on the top right.
It combines those three.
Yeah.
It treats itself as three valence.
Yeah.
It's like
it's all the way on the right side. Okay. And aluminum, basically they learned how to purify it and isolate it in the modern era. So it's very plentiful. Like I said, the Earth is basically made out of silicon dioxide, sand, and aluminum. It's the most plentiful metal around us. It's just, you have to isolate it. So the question is, if you were to make a pot entirely out of one of these metals, cobalt or aluminum, the tzad to say that it doesn't have the din of metal in the mikvah, etc., and Torah is because it's not one of the six mentioned in the Torah. But it's pointed out, like you said, that's silly. The Chazal always make sure to use the general term matachoth. Why? Gold, silver, copper, bronze, iron, lead, and tin, and everything that behaves like them. Okay, which includes aluminum. So if you have an aluminum pot, these would apply also. If you would have, like I said, a cobalt pot, a zinc pot, you could make things out of, a pot out of cobalt or zinc. Right?
Yeah, but
nickel.
What about silicon?
No, so silicone is not. It doesn't behave like a metal in the same way.
It's a metalloid.
It's a metalloid, okay, or semi-metal. So that's what it means. My point is, it seems very clear that all the halachas that apply to the six known metals at the time and their alloys would apply equally to the other metals. And the I guess the usual chemistry definition, the secular definition of metals, would be accepted by Chazal for all intents and purposes.
Pretty much all metals, even back then, were people didn't really use elemental iron.
No, of course not. You have to make it steel. You have to make it into steel.
Right.
Yeah. And even then the steel rusts.
Like wrought iron. Even wrought iron has a certain carbon content to it.
Yes. Very good. Good. So we did our homework. So let's say you had a metal vessel that had the chatas cooked in it. So you bring it back to the azara. And he has to do the whole koshering process. This whole scouring should be done in the azara. Nitma kishiyatza. But what happens if it got contaminated? It left. It left the azara, got contaminated. What do? Pochato ad sheyitar. He should reduce it. That means blemish it somehow. Poke a hole in it, this pot, until it's pure, but still a kli. It's not the kli it was, but still technically a kli. Umachniso, and then bring it back to the azara. Bichozer bifnim, and inside miradido ad sheyisasem apchat. And he should hammer it out, do whatever meddling he has to do. He has to meddle with it. Okay, meddle. He has to meddle with the metal until he's closed up the hole. V'achzor kitavnit kelim, and then it's a proper kli again. V'achakach moriko v'shot fo bazara. Okay, and then he should scour it. Wait, why do you have to fix it before scouring it? You had to fix it, you had to ruin it in order to purify it, so that you could bring it to the azara. Now it's in the azara. Now he has to turn it back into a kli. Why? Before he could scour it and remove the tastes from the kli. Why? Shnemar v'im b'kli in the chosheth. If you were to, the Torah gives an example. If you were to cook the chatas in a bronze pot, ein morikim b'fnim ela kelim. The only thing you scour in the base of mikdash is actual kelim that have this function. So he has to turn it back into the kli it was. Purifies it by dekleeing it, I guess. bringing it to the base into the azara, turning it back into a kli, and then scouring it. So you can understand the Kohanim, they had to launder things, they had to kosher pots and pans, they had to work with metal. They needed all these facilities on the base of Mikdash. They also had to bake. They need a lot of cooking areas and a lot of baking areas. So the base of Mikdash, you can imagine, there's cooking area, baking area. Outside in the Ezras Nashim, there's one of the lishkas where Nazirim are shaving themselves. Okay, they have to deal with a lot of wood. So there's a lot of food going on, a lot of food preparation, and don't forget laundering. Okay? The laundry area and the scouring area. Very interesting. I wonder how they fit this all in there. Which Kohanim were in charge of what? You could imagine there are certain Kohanim. There are many people by their very nature are, I guess, they're put off by slaughtering animals. I would imagine many Kohanim would not be the ones who are putting out their thumbs and trying to, get the privilege of doing many of the services that involve entrails, dissecting the animals, the blood, certainly the slaughter. That's not for everybody. So I would imagine
thing. Back then people weren't so.
I know some people know Chazal talk about certain people's natures to slaughter. Chazal said, remember, certain people have more of a nature, they're bloodshedders. So they could be a murderer or they could be a shochet or a moel. It has always been the case. And this is throughout, there are certain people who cannot stand blood. They certainly can't be a moel or shochet, and they're not going to do well as Kohanim in that regard. And there are also some people who, for example, are really put off by contact with the dead. There's the man here who is the mohel, very good mohel, very good hands. He has no qualms about moeling. He's also, lo and behold, the man who is in charge of putting people in the graves. Here in Eretz Yisrael, have you seen how they do a funeral? There's someone gets down there in the grave and receives the deceased in his hands and lays him down. Have you seen that? Yeah. Do you have the guts to do that? Yeah. So that there's one guy here who can do it. Okay. It's the same type of person who's not squeamish. I remember it nearly happened to me that I had to do this. That funeral we did where we dug the grave, and this fellow didn't show up at the funeral. Right? It came time to actually do the burying. So I said, okay, no one else is going to take the initiative. I'm right there. I just dug the grave. So I guess I'll go down and do it. Got to do what you got to do. And I guess luckily, the guy who always does it showed up, mamish, right at the last second, just came right in there with the save. Okay. Some people can handle it. Some people can't. Let's look at the next mitzvah. What's an asham? This is very, very short mitzvah. He's going to mention the various ashamoth, which is a very specific type of korban. Achatas, we said, why does a person bring a chatas? What does the Torah prescribe a chatas for? A sin b'shogeg, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of averes. Shogeg is something that's unwitting for whatever reason. That's why we have the idea in edus. At least a Jew. There's no such thing as hasra with a guy. If he wants to claim shkaga, he has to. There's due process for that. Zadon and shkaga. But for a Jew, how do we know that a Jew was mazid as opposed to shogeg? A Jew. Well, no, but a court of law. How basically a Jew can claim shkaga, right? A Jew can claim shkaga if the court that claim is believed. How does the court prove? Okay, the prosecutors, how do they prove zadon, which is the opposite of shkaga? How does a court prove zadon?
He was warned.
He was warned by two witnesses.
And he acknowledged
specifically, and he acknowledged the warning. He says afal pichin.
And then he did the thing immediately after. Yeah.
So that's the threshold of zadon for a Jew. Other than that, a Jew can claim shkaga, right? So shkagos are, I guess, is good closing. So the chatas is prescribed for a Jew who commits an act b'shkaga. We should just mention for a ben Noach, it's totally different legal proceeding. A ben Noach is considered a zadon based on the circumstances. He should have known. If he's bar das, he should know that killing is an aver, killing a person. He could claim self-defense. Okay, so you could prove that. There's more to that. He can't claim shkaga for killing, for example. A guy can't claim, I didn't know that killing was usher. Okay, I didn't know he was a person. There's no such thing. Okay? A guy he has a much harder standard to get out of, the Zadon case. But a guy, by the way, is not punished for shkaga. If a guy can really show that he was a shogeg for an avero, and for a guy, all his averos are capital cases. If he could show he's a shkaga, so he's off the hook. So too if he's a cotton. And the way the Rambam defines it, a gadol is anybody. It seems to be his definition of cotton and gadol are across the board for humans. You say for humans. So any goy over goyish male over the age of 13 is tried as an adult, or a girl over the age of 12 is tried as an adult. Okay, so just to know. So shkagas, chatas is basically the korban that God prescribes for when a Jew is a shogeg, unwitting in performance of commandment. An asham, a guilt offering, which is very similar to a chatas in many respects, is not prescribed for mostly shkagas. It's prescribed for certain sins, which are actually explicit. Okay, it means he committed a sin, whatever it is. A lot of times that's why you shouldn't get the confusion. Ashram specifically is prescribed. I guess it doesn't give the list here. He doesn't give the list here of what it is, what it's for, but he's going to get into that. So let's just say like the Asham Mitzorah. It's not that he's a shkaga. That has nothing to do with it. He was a Mitzorah. He has to bring this Asham. Okay? And so too with the Nazir. So we'll just mention this one line. Mitzvata say lasoth kol Ashamot k'mitzvatan hamuraba Torah. It's a mitzvah of the Torah according to the Rambam to perform all the Ashamos exactly as it's told in Torah. The Chetzad Maaseh Ashamot, how is that performed? Bein Asham Vadai, Bein Asham Talui, whether it's an Asham Vader or Asham Talui, which he mentioned before. I think it was like right at the beginning. You see Maaseh Korbanos, what does he say here? Let's see here, you give a distinction. I don't see it's supposed to be here. Chatas Asham Ola. I lost it here. I should have made a note of it. Okay, we'll talk about it next week. Okay, so there's the Adam Asham Vada Asham Talui Shochev Zorek Adam Kamoshav Yarna when he's supposed to slaughter and throw the blood, just as we explained. So I guess we'll save that for next week. That's it. Any questions, comments? Well, should have a good Shabbos then.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.